Okay, so we're going to talk about the Fairfield County Municipal Deer Management Alliance. And you can say, well, what is that? We're 18 to 23 towns, okay? Okay, Frank, how are we going to do this where I can get this on here?
You just got to point at it.
Can you zoom in on that camera there? On this? Yeah.
And then where's the zoom in stuff? Because I got to hold up some stuff. Good evening and welcome to the Marty Heiser Show, where you always get the truth. Always get the truth right here on the Marty Heiser Show. We are so excited about tonight's show. We have got some very, very interesting things. You know, I'm not going to speak for anyone else on the panel, but I hunt deer. Yes, little Bambis. I hunt deer. And there's one thing that's concerned with the deer population is the Lyme disease that's just absolutely rampant. Right here tonight, we're going to be talking about Lyme disease with the Fairfield County Municipal Deer Management Alliance. Yes, this organization that strikes terror into the hearts of anyone who doesn't see that there's an epidemic of Lyme disease in the state of Connecticut. We're going to be talking to them. By the way, if you've watched this show anytime in the last couple weeks, we've been hanging out with hockey players in bars. Tonight, we're putting on a tie. We're going to be talking about an incredible surge that's underway for the Ron Paul candidacy. Now, I can't say I'm a true believer in Ron Paul yet, but if anyone on this board or on the committee that's going to be representing Ron Paul tonight has their way, they will convince me of the importance of a Ron Paul presidency. One thing I will say, there were 8 or there were 9. Now there are 4 remaining. And Ron Paul is one of them, and he seems to be doing pretty good in South Carolina. So stay tuned. We're going to talk a lot about Ron Paul. We're going to talk a lot about deer and Lyme disease and how we can manage this rampant disease, which really is getting worse, not better, a little known secret. And we'll be talking about some other stuff. But first of all, I want to just bring up one issue. You know, sometimes when people say, oh, conservative Republicans, what is it with you guys? You're always complaining about government intervention in business and things like that. Come on, when does that really happen? Well, this past week, we had a perfect example of government interference in the private sector, government interference standing in the way of the Keystone Pipeline. This is really incredible what happened this past week. Our president, President Obama, and I know that there's some out there, and by the way, the phone number here is 438-2003, 438-2003. If you want to call in and say that I'm all wet and Barack Obama is really a good guy and is doing a wonderful thing for this country, by all means call in. All comers, just dial that number. You'll get right on the air, 438-2003. But for my money, what I see what happened with this Keystone Pipeline and the federal government in the person of Barack Obama standing in the way of that job creation, allowing fuel to come down from Canada into the United States is just standing in the way of progress. It does a couple things. One of the things is it causes us to rely on overseas producers of oils. Yes, you know, Iraq, Iran, all those people that don't really like us that much, the Muslim Brotherhood and all the rest. We can buy the fuel that we need from our wonderful brothers and sisters in Canada. That's right, Canada, the wonderful country to the north, the peace-loving country from the north. We have the largest unprotected international border in the world between us and those wonderful Canadians up there. All they really want to do is watch Hockey Night in Canada, drink Molson, and make other Canadians. That's what they're very good at. That's what they want. And they also happen to have one heck of a lot of oil. And I'll tell you something about the Prime Minister of Canada. He is so frustrated. Let me just tell you what he said. Harper accuses Americans, that's his name, Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Harper accuses American groups of hijacking public hearings by a federal regulatory agency which is assessing the environmental impact of the $6.6 billion pipeline project. Decisions on the development of Alberta oil sands should be left to Canadians, he says. You know, the Canadians, they're laughing at us. They're laughing at us. I married a Canadian. That's how strongly I feel about Canadians. I have 4 brother-in-laws up in Canada. Let me tell you a little bit about the Canadian economy. It's thriving. They're doing wonderful. Their corporate tax rates are lower than America. Their debt to GDP ratio is much lower than America. They have a pro-growth, pro-energy government up there, and all they want to do is run a pipeline down here. You can build it. You can put those people to work down in the Gulf of Mexico and all those oil refineries, but no. It's the federal government at a time when this recession is dragging now into the 4th year that is standing in the way of the Keystone Pipeline. It just makes no sense whatsoever unless you're running for president and there's a bunch of environmental wackos that you want to make sure vote for you. And when you go to the cheese and wine parties with these environmentalists, and they go, tisk, 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 I can't believe that you're building a pipeline across Nebraska, and you don't want to be tisk, tisk, tisk at, and you need that voting block, then and only then are you willing to put the rest of the American economy in jeopardy so that you can make sure that that one segment of that voting block is going to be there for you in November. That's what I think is going on. Why else would you go against the unions? Why else would you go against job creation like this Keystone Pipeline? I'm telling you, it's something that has me riled, and I think in the end it could cost President Obama his presidency come in November, because not only me, but the unions and people that are in trouble economically are really frustrated about this government intervention. Topic number 2. If we can get a close-up of this, Frank, this would be great. I'm going to do a little chest pumping for the Ridgefield High School education. They were voted number 1 in the state for the percentage of students that go on to a 4-year college. There you see it at the bottom. Ridgefield High School, top state in college completion. That's right. If you get a close-up of that bar graph, you'll see Darien, New Canaan, Greenwich, wonderful communities, all of them, but not as good as Ridgefield, Connecticut. And
it's right under Reading, right?
Yeah, it's right under Reading. Really, Reading is kind of like a little sister to Ridgefield. So kudos to the Ridgefield Board of Ed. Kudos to just the entire Ridgefield community and their support of education. And you know, we do it at great value. There's great value in Ridgefield as well. So enough pumping of Ridgefield, but I salute the Ridgefield Board of Ed and their ability to get that type of results where the highest percentage of Ridgefield High School graduates go on to a 4-year college. It's a beautiful thing, and they're good 4-year colleges too. So if you're looking for a house, come to Ridgefield. Is that commercial promoting or not really?
No, I think that's okay.
It's okay?
You're not asking for money. So.
I'm not asking for money. Just come to Ridgefield and buy a house. All right. Well, I'm glad I got to vent on that. This Keystone Pipeline thing, you put that in there with Solyndra and everything else and all this government intervention in business. I'm telling you, it's no good. It's no good for the economy. And it's really what's causing us to be dragging into now the 4th year of this god-awful recession. We need to turn this around. And you know what? Americans always do. They will. We reinvent ourselves all the time. Anyone that had anything going in their lives over in Europe, say in like the 1700s or something, they just hung there and had it good. But if you were robust, if you had an independent spirit, if you had a pioneering spirit and you wanted to come and you wanted to change things and you wanted to control your destiny, that's what makes up Americans. And that's why I'm so optimistic that we're going to turn this thing around. But it could be some rough sledding for now. Having said all that, I'm sorry, did I take it straight? Thank you so much
Marty,
for joining us.
always a pleasure. I'm wearing a different hat today.
You are, and I appreciate you coming in. Just a little bit of background. Where are you from originally?
Yeah, we're still not sure on that. But let me, it's irresistible to just comment on this Keystone Pipeline for just 1 second.
Please do.
Think about the effects, the impact of Obama's decision today. Number one, it keeps the terrorists in business, right?
Yeah.
It assures our dependence on foreign oil. Wasn't that one of our goals, was to get off of foreign oil? Number two.
I love Canadians. Like I say, why not give them money?
The best.
Yeah, why not give them to my brother-in-law? They're good people.
Number two, it keeps Americans out of work. Yeah. We need jobs.
And I love the thing where, these construction jobs, they're just temporary jobs. Every construction job is a temporary job. After you build the thing, you don't have the job anymore. But the infrastructure, the petroleum, the refining down in the Gulf Coast, this idea that, it's only a temporary job, that just frustrates me.
Well, and not only that, it destroys the environment. Now you say, well, how can that be? If we're not building the pipeline, how are we destroying the environment? Well, the fact is that anything that is built in Canada, in the U.S., has much stricter controls, environmental controls and regulations than it does in the Middle East or Venezuela or any other country producing oil. Mm-hmm. So by producing the oil here, we have much stricter controls on the environmental impact.
You ever seen the pictures of the Nigerian oil that they have right there on the coast?
Their spills are legendary.
There isn't an EPA official within 500,000 miles.
Right. So, and any decision like this, you always have to say, hey, there must be a money trail out there somewhere. Yeah. So where's the money trail on this?
I know where you're going.
I'll tell you right now.
We're not taxed enough. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the Oracle of Omaha. What state is blocking this or being the primary obstacle? Let me think.
Nebraska.
Maybe Nebraska.
Big red.
And how is that oil getting to the market right now? Let's see. Maybe
behind Warren Buffett's backyard, right through the swing set.
The BN Railroad. Guess who bought the BN 2 years ago? Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is making a fortune off of shipping railroad crude oil to market. You put in that pipeline, all of a sudden the BN's going, hey, but what about me? I'm telling you, folks, this is one of the most miserable decisions ever to come out of Washington. And that says a lot, because Obamacare, I thought, took the cake. Anyway, but let me move on, if that's okay.
Sure.
You asked about the Fairfield County Municipal Deer Management Alliance.
Yeah, let's switch gears on this, because this is something that, well, you tell me. You bring. I mean, we had on this show a couple months ago an individual that was suffering from Lyme disease.
Right, Bob Diamond.
Extended Lyme disease, and I think
lives in Connecticut.
That really put a face to this whole issue. But what can be done, what's being done, and what's standing in the way?
So, the Fairfield County Municipal Deer Management Alliance represents 18 of the 23 towns in Fairfield County. These are town-appointed positions, and these towns pay money into this organization. Our goal of the organization is to provide help and to disseminate information on what can be done, what are the implications, what research is being done, and to educate people on the impact of high deer densities, Lyme disease, vehicle accidents, everything that's coming from these high deer densities. Mm-hmm. Now, the latest DEP survey, aerial survey, was taken in January this past year, in 2010-11, and showed that we had gone from 64 deer per square mile to 76 deer per square mile in Fairfield County.
Over what time period?
In 3 years.
In the previous 3 years, the population is increasing.
Right, from 64 to 76 deer per square mile. Wow. That's a staggering number.
Yeah.
So you have to get deer numbers back. See, we used to have less than 10 deer per square mile, and guess what? We didn't have Lyme disease.
Yeah.
If you can get these deer numbers back down to 10 deer per square mile, the towns that have done that, Lyme disease is dropped by over 95%. Mm-hmm. The correlation, statistical correlation, is once you hit 25 deer per square mile, as you drop down to 10, it's pretty much a straight line down. The correlation is absolute. Mm-hmm. So what our goal is to educate people about the relationship, what they can do. More and more towns in Fairfield County are contacting the DEP saying, look, you say we can control this deer population problem just by hunting, recreational hunting. Well, we say no, prove it. So they're sending letters. Reading has done it. Wilton has done it. A bunch of towns, Brookfield has done it. A bunch of towns in Fairfield.
Ridgefield has a controlled hunt. They have a deer policy.
Well, they allow recreational hunting on town land.
Okay.
Okay, so that's better than nothing to some degree.
Right.
And I think it's a pretty well-managed program. They get a few deer every year. In fact, for the last couple of years, they've led Fairfield County in total number of deer taken.
Ridgefield has.
Yeah, so I don't want to be...
Once again, Ridgefield leading
Well,
the thing.
okay, but-
By the way, if you can put the number up too, if anyone has some input on experiences they've had with Lyme disease, deer population, he'll have the number up. Just keep that up if you would. Just feel free to call in.
But you know, the person that runs the effort in Ridgefield, I contacted him last year. I said, "Well, congratulations, you're first again in Ridgefield. You know, Ridgefield is
Jim
first."
Beloit, is that the guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
First in Connecticut, first in Fairfield County. Congratulations. But the little known fact here is that you're getting twice as many deer kills by vehicle accidents as we are. So that's what puts you over the top. So we harvest more through hunting and all the rest, but you hit more.
We take them out with the BMW. You take them out with a bow and arrow.
Whatever it takes.
Okay.
So I said, Jim, could you please reroute your commuter traffic through Reading to help us with our deer population? He didn't find that to be too funny.
Well, okay.
Anyway, so I'm going to...
There are certain lists you don't want to be on the top of. I guess, deer car accidents would be one of them you don't want to be on the top of.
There you go. So what I'm going to do... Yeah. One of the gentlemen here just mentioned the impact of coyotes on the deer herd, and I can get to that a little bit later. But let me just rattle off some facts.
Please.
Okay. So you need a large mammal to complete the life cycle of the tick. This is Center for Disease Control, Department of Environmental Protection. Everybody agrees. Look, the deer has to complete. Connecticut Ag Extension Service, all agree you have to have a large mammal complete the life cycle of the tick in order for an adult deer tick to drop ticks. The primary mammal in the forest is the deer. 94% of the ticks tested had fed on deer. 94% of the ticks that were tested.
Okay.
That's a staggering number. So it is clearly the deer. You drop the deer numbers down, Lyme disease drops as well. The co-infection rate, most people now that are getting Lyme disease are getting a co-infection. There are over 15 diseases associated with ticks that can result from ticks. Some are absolutely fatal. Lyme disease itself is a type of syphilis, and left untreated results in death. So this is a very serious situation.
Dave, you're kind of freaking me out with this.
Listen, it's ruining lives. Yeah. It is destroying people's lives. It can be passed in vitro. A pregnant woman can pass it on to their child. So we're learning more and more about the disease as we go. And if you don't catch it right away in the first week or so, right, you run the risk of having long-term problems.
Real quick, because that I think is an important point, because I've had Lyme disease, my son has had Lyme disease. When you're initially, first of all, do a tick check. We're talking primarily during months when you're outdoors.
It's year-round, but go ahead.
Okay, but tick check for, it actually is, because I took a tick off my horse just like last week. Mm-hmm. You'd think it'd be over, but it's the dead of winter, and so it is year-round. But do a tick check. If you do find an engorged tick or find that look for the rash, and the rash should come within the first week or so, something like that. And then if you have a rash and flu-like symptoms, make sure you get seen by a doctor, and when you do, they'll give you the antibiotics, and you can knock it out at that stage. If you don't know you've been bitten, and you just have a rash, sometimes the rash don't even materialize, or you just have a flu-like symptom, you feel sick, but you don't get seen by a doctor, you don't suspect you have Lyme, the initial symptoms go away, and then they come back 6 months later, and then you're in big trouble. Is that accurate?
No,
I'm not a doctor, but I think that's
accurate. What I want to do, I'm going to jump to this video real quick I have here.
Yes.
Because that way we can free up Frank on that camera. But most people sitting in your living room today have never seen, you don't want to necessarily go out of your way to see a deer up close that's dead, but until you actually see it, you can't see all the ticks that are on these deer. These deer are covered. Okay. They're, some of them are just lined around their mouths, ears, everything. So I'm gonna hit this video, hit play on this video, and see if we can get this to work. And
you got the sound?
Wednesday, November 23rd, 2011. This is a small deer with
So basically what we're looking at here is a deer that's been harvested.
Yep.
And we're going to get the sound up in a second.
Infested these things are, and I don't know how well this is going to pick up, but if you can see all these black bumps in here, these are ticks. Some of them have actually started pulling themselves off, but you can see how these ticks are embedded in this poor deer all along the inside of his legs.
So what we're seeing here too is just all those little dots on his legs are ticks.
Right there. His body's no longer cold. Maybe not a lot of blood flowing, so and you can see here.
So all those little dots you're seeing right there are the ticks, some of which have begun to get engorged.
Actually,
And Dave Straight is going to tell us what we're seing here.
anyway, you can see him in there. So these ticks are just
So what you're seeing is a deer that was harvested about a month or two ago. And those little black dots are all the ticks that are just completely covering this deer. So you can see them, you see them on the insides of the back legs. You'll see them on the insides of the top legs. On this deer, fortunately, he didn't have, ticks in his ears. But these things, an engorged tick gets
Holy smokes.
almost the size of, the tip of your small finger, like the size of the fingernail. And, in Maine, these ticks, you can Google it and you can see all the ticks on the moose in Maine. They literally just kill the moose just from so many of them. Now, the thing about deer is deer don't get Lyme disease. They're the perfect host. And they feed these ticks, and these ticks are like B-52 bombers walking through the woods, dropping all of their eggs. And it's a miserable situation. Any given deer can have thousands of ticks on them, and they're dropping millions of deer tick eggs. So, next spring, you're going to have nymphs, and these things can live up to 2 years without feeding. So,
Well, let me ask you, by the way, in that situation there when hunters go out and harvest, what is the meat used? Is it donated, and how does that work?
none of it goes to waste. There's not an ounce of this deer meat. If you try and buy deer meat online, it's $25 a pound. There's not an ounce of this deer. There's a line of people waiting for deer meat. A lot of it does go to shelters and food banks, and a lot of them, these hunters just feed their families.
Yeah.
It takes
I know, like the Bridgeport Rescue Mission, I've donated some eating material, venison and so forth. You can take it down there. You have the deer butchered, and it's wrapped in white butcher paper, fast frozen, and none of this meat goes to waste. All right, you have very articulately and in a dramatic presentation said where the problem is. I like the B-52 bomber of ticks, that are going through there.
That's true.
This is something that it's not only a danger when you have car accidents due to deer, but obviously the ravages of Lyme disease. What is the solution? What can be done, and what is being done, and why isn't more being done? Break it down for people so they understand. I mean, like hunting, don't like hunting, think deer are majestic and wonderful. I think, we're the superior species and we should be able to have a little bit of management of this. What can be done?
Well, in a nutshell, the reason that you have this high deer density in Fairfield County is because the DEP protects deer.
Is this a state level, federal level?
State level.
Okay.
So it's now the DEEP, but they protect deer. Think about it. Think about the regulations that DEP has that protect deer.
Right.
Why do we have a hunting season?
Tradition? We're not even allowed to hunt on Sundays. That's tradition.
Well, I know, but think about that. People think, there's a hunting season so you can remove deer. No, there's a hunting season to protect deer. Because 7 months out of the year, you can't touch them. You touch them, you go to jail.
Yeah.
The deer season protects deer, plain and simple. Name some other regulations. Well, let me think. Why do you have a bow season that starts before the firearm season? And why is the firearm season so short? It's because they want to give the bow guys a chance to get a deer. Right. Firearm use is 10 times more effective than archery. Yeah. So if you want to get deer numbers down, you have to have, on private property, who cares if it's a year-round season? So on parks, I can see where there's a multi-use issue. Maybe you should try and do deer reduction in the winter when the parks aren't used as much and all the rest. But on private land, it's my property. Why should I be forced for threat of going to jail to play host to deer that pose a threat to me and my family?
Okay, so realistically, you're saying expand the hunting season.
You have to have
allow more firearms hunting, and at the end of the day, hunting is the answer. You can't castrate deer or live transports to other places.
Right.
These are
so you bring up a real good point, because I read another study on this recently, that deer. So people try and say, well, why can't you just fix the deer? Why can't you just neuter their deer? Well, okay, at about $1,000 each, you could probably do that, and you might get a third of the deer, but they get pretty smart. I mean, they don't like getting shot with darts. So then you say, well, what are the other options? Can't you relocate them? Well, okay, but 70 to 80% of them die in transport because of the trauma of the transport. So that doesn't work so well. What is so objectionable to? In fact, it's not objectionable. I mean, I run into so little resistance on this topic. My only resistance right now is the DEP. Their whole culture is designed to protect the deer, and politicians that don't want to put anything at risk because they think, oh, well, someone's going to object. Well, the fact is, the DEP did studies and put out research reports, and they said, look, deer reduction efforts in a deer management environment, you have never had an accident. And even in hunting, they claim hunting is safer than swimming or riding a bike. So people always say, oh, we got to think about safety. Well, you know what? You're sitting in a tree, 20 to 30 feet in a tree, shooting at the ground. It's pretty safe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are some of the other or DEP regulations that block this? Well, let me think. You have to check in your deer. That's an obstacle. Fees are an obstacle. Can you imagine let's say you've got a termite problem. Can you imagine calling me, an exterminator, and saying, hey, I want to charge you $200 to get rid of my infestation problem? Doesn't work like that. Yeah. I mean, we're trying to get deer numbers down. Why should the people have to pay to get deer numbers down? I'll give you another good regulation, or not so good regulation, is in order to get a crop damage permit, you have to demonstrate that you can generate between $2,000 and $3,000 of revenue off of that crop. Yeah. Well, is that the goofiest thing? What does that do for organic gardeners?
Just tonight, I was watching on Fox News that there was an encampment in Washington, D.C. that is being run over by rats. But they're not allowed to kill the rats. They have to have a live transportation of the rats, and they have to be transported in family units. Honest to goodness, Washington, D.C.
We're our own worst enemy.
As a rat. These are rats. These aren't, majestic Bambi-like deers. Yeah. These are rats. At some point, we have to conclude that, there is some sort of game management that needs to take place.
Right.
And that to ignore it is just ridiculous, and it's going to cause more problems for the dominant species, which last time I checked were humans, down the line. Car accidents, the ravages of Lyme disease. I mean, this needs to get under control.
So
give me your last thoughts on what people can do.
Everybody that's watching this show tonight should write this name down: Susan Frechette at the.
I don't think you can. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. No, I'm kidding.
I'm not. Yeah. Susan Frechette at the DEEP. Google it, Connecticut DEP. Look up Susan Frechette. Send her an email. Send her, pick up the phone, call her, write her a letter. Tell her that you've got to get the DEP off our back. You have to untie us, take the handcuffs off, let us manage the deer problem, and we will take care of this Lyme disease problem. You get your deer numbers back down to 10 deer per square mile, your Lyme disease problem goes away. It's just that simple.
I think there's more support than that for this than you think.
But nobody knows what to do. I'm telling you right now, put pressure on the DEP to free this thing up and let us address the problem. They're the primary obstacle.
All right. Well, listen, thanks for coming in. We're going to take a little break right now. I think we have a group from now through the end. It's going to be wall to wall Ron Paul, and I'll tell you, if you've been watching any of this primary action that's going on right down in South Carolina, just today we had Rick Perry, who ended up dropping out of the primary. Just today, you saw on camera Newt Gingrich's ex-wife say that Newt was trying to have an open marriage. And I don't know, do we have something that we're going to cut to, or we're just going to have them fill in? All right. That's right. I always have a lot on my mind. By the way, the phone number here is 438-2003. Feel free to call in and make sure that your voice is heard. So don't hesitate at all to call in. But we're going to be talking about Ron Paul, and of course, joining us this evening as well is Larry Ditkoff. Now, Larry Ditkoff has a cult following. Usually he wears a pink tie, and sometimes he needs to be woken up. Yes, in the middle of the afternoon because he oversleeps. But Larry Ditkoff will be joining us as well to give his perspective on things. Larry Ditkoff feels that non-residents should be able to vote. He feels as if I'm putting words in his mouth, but he's right here in studio. Take my word for it, and he's going to be able to give you his own point of view. But we're going to be talking about Ron Paul. A couple things that I think. Sometimes Republicans or conservatives are told, oh, why are you always worried about government regulation, government intervention? Well, we talked a little bit about it with this Keystone Pipeline. You see that. And then there's the other thing. There's the elite media. Oh, they're always out to get conservatives. That's the big thing. It is interesting if you think back. Go back to the Clinton primaries when he was running and had that little trouble with that saucy blonde from Arkansas that was claiming, I think her name was Jennifer Flowers. You'll recall that a few days before a very key primary, CBS had Bill and Hillary Clinton on as they held hands and said, our marriage has had some troubles, but everything's fine now. And they gave all this opportunity to butt up Bill Clinton and his marriage and how everything is fine. It is interesting to see that 2 days before a very important primary, Newt Gingrich's wife is giving absolute high-profile interview on ABC News talking about how Newt wanted to have an open marriage and how terrible this was. He went out and had an affair with this other woman, and it's just awful, awful, awful. I do think it is kind of awful. It is sort of awful that lady who was saying that also had an affair with Newt when he was married to Mrs. Newt #1. It gets very complicated. You should get a scratch paper out to see, how it all works out. But the point is that ABC News is doing this interview with ex-wife #2 of Newt Gingrich 2 days before a very important primary, right as Newt Gingrich is sort of surging in the polls. It's telling, because you'll see that the liberal media on the other side of the coin, Bill Clinton, was having kind of this, let's rehabilitate Bill and Hillary after he was accused of having all these affairs with Jennifer Flowers. Interesting. One side, the media tries to build up the candidate and say it's okay. The other side, they try and tear it down. But I'll tell you something. The conservative point of view has a very good home, I think, at Fox News. I do think it's fair and balanced. And we have media outlets of our own, so I guess everyone gets to tune into what they want and kind of hum along. Okay, I need the list of names and everything too, which aren't here, but if we could get those, that'd be great. But Keith, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
And why don't you interview your panel, introduce your panel all the way around, and then I want to talk to you all about Ron Paul.
Well, we're representing the Ridgefield Liberty Cooperative amongst myself, Richard Land, Barbara Costello. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Larry Ditkoff is joining us as well.
So we're the Ridgefield Liberty Co-op. We are strong supporters of Ron Paul. We've been supporting him since 2008. And he's the only small government conservative that's right now running for the Republican nomination.
And last time I checked, he's one of the 4 that is still standing.
He's one of the 4 left.
And that is impressive.
And he's there for the long haul.
Okay, now I before this show, I went online. I watched all the South Carolina debate that just happened. First of all, let me get your reaction. Did you think Ron Paul did well in that debate? Did you think he came off bad? What was your reaction?
I think he's done a great job in all the debates, and I think the main thing is that he's the one who stands out amongst the crowd as the one who really wants to cut spending from current levels, and who really wants to do something about the military-industrial complex that all these other candidates seem to embrace.
And he did quote Eisenhower in that vein too, as far as the military-industrial complex.
Yep.
And he did say, now this is a pop quiz. What is the most expensive embassy that America has built, and what religious headquarter has it been compared to?
Well, the Iraqi embassy in Baghdad.
Cost?
as much as the
Billion.
Vatican. Well, a lot of money, and it's as big as the Vatican.
Yeah, that's what Ron Paul's talking. He's got his talking points down. $1 billion was spent on that embassy. It's as big as the Vatican, and his point is, don't necessarily cut defense spending, but bring the boys home.
Yeah.
Do you think that message is resonating?
Sure. And we're planning to build one just as big in Afghanistan, in Kabul. So, I mean, it's definitely resonating.
Get the list of names.
Yeah.
Keep talking. Yeah.
Well, you asked Keith
Yeah.
what he thought of Ron Paul's performance in the last debate. And
Right.
I have to tell you that I thought it was one of his weakest performances.
Okay.
But he's got so much to say. And there's one thing I love about Ron Paul is he'll get you thinking about things. I remember, for example, he was on Meet the Press with Tim Russert.
Right.
And Tim Russert was giving him a hard time about the Civil War. And basically said, you don't think we needed to have a Civil War? And he said, no, I don't think so. And he said, you think we should still have slaves? And Ron Paul said, no, but I don't think it was necessary for 600,000 people to die when all the other countries in the world were able to abolish slavery without a war.
Yeah.
So it got me going back and looking it up, and he's absolutely right. It led me to read a book called Greatest Emancipations. Brazil did it without a war.
Okay.
So did all the others.
Well, at one point in that debate, it was an interesting juxtaposition because you had Ron Paul talking about trying to capture terrorists and interrogate them and saying how that's a better way to handle it. Then he went on to say, and I quoted it because I wrote it down, he said, we need to do unto others as they would want you to do unto them, like the golden rule. And he said, it's no reason when we are endlessly bombing these people that they want to come over and commit terrorism on us. Now that got some boos in the audience, and I can understand that. Because I think all of us have a common denominator on 9/11 when they went and they flew planes into the building. And we say, hey, what did we do to you? Where is this coming from? And Ron Paul would seem to say that it would be that we bombed them, we brought it upon ourselves. Now I'll just finish my point. After that, Newt Gingrich comes on. And he quotes someone Jackson or something like that, and he said he had the right to approach our enemies, kill them. I mean, right there was a big switch, I think, in that audience. But what was your take?
Then that was the part of the debate I thought he was weakest in, because people get confused. They're confused and think he's kind of defending Osama bin Laden.
Right.
No, that's not what he's doing. He's defending a process. It's a process that's designed to protect all of us from the abuses of government. Okay? And people don't understand that it's the process that he defends straight down the line. These are constitutional principles that we can't alter, because if we do, we're all at risk. He's defending us. He's not defending Osama bin Laden. He's defending the process, the due process, habeas corpus, not being able to throw people in Guantanamo without an arraignment, without probable cause hearings, without anything, for unlimited periods of time, which is what the National Defense Authorization Act did. Now,
Barack Obama just signed that again.
Yeah.
But we'll get to Larry in just a minute, because that's his kind of...
So anyway, I wish that he had made the point, I'm not defending Osama bin Laden. I'm defending a process, and I think it's important to respect the sovereignty of other countries.
Is there, when you woke up the morning and you heard that a Navy SEAL had put 2 bullets into the head of Osama bin Laden, was there any part of you that said, good, we got the son of a gun?
Come
on, not a lot of people watch this show.
I'm being told that I should talk louder. Is this loud enough? Okay. No, honestly, I mean, he was a bad guy. He deserved to die. But did I feel some elation? Definitely not. I felt that our country is going down the wrong track. I felt that the process is more important than knocking off somebody in a style that resembled a gangland murder. They dropped him off a plane into the ocean. I'm sorry. That's not the kind of country that I thought I grew up in.
You know where the Civil War was started? I think it was Fort Sumter, and right outside of where that debate was. They're down in South Carolina. They're pretty, hot-headed. I think that they liked Newt Gingrich's approach to that. All right, Barb, pop quiz.
Oh, no.
Who do What endorsement do the following people have in common? Bill Maher, Pat Buchanan, Judge Napolitano, and Barry Manilow.
Well,
Who are all of them endorsing?
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul. So that's quite a big spectrum, from Barry Manilow to Pat Buchanan.
Freedom brings people together.
Why is that, and what is the lasting appeal? And just give us raw politics. What's he going to be able to do in South Carolina, and is this candidacy really viable?
Well, I think it's if it's not Ron Paul, I don't know what this country's going to do, because he's our only really constitutionally pure candidate. The other ones say they're going, they take the oath to protect and defend the Constitution, but then they forget about it as soon as they're there, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats. So what do all those people you just said have in common, like
Yeah.
Judge Napolitano? And I think, well, Judge Napolitano is definitely, an amazing judge who believes in constitutional government, and he sees in Ron Paul this amazing man that totally is contrary to what we think. He's not a politician. He's a statesman. He'll get up there, just as Richard said, during that last debate, and he will be laughed at. He will be mocked. He knows he's going to get the wrath of the audience, but he'll speak the truth. He doesn't back down. And when you hear the truth, it's very attractive. And yet, I think the establishment, whether you're Fox News, MSNBC, CBS, I don't care who they are, they attack Ron Paul. And so he must be doing something unique. And I think that's what all those people see in him, a unique candidate for our time.
What I think is going on with Ron Paul, because I do agree that there's a bias. I mean, if you go on YouTube, you can see all these videos. There's definitely a bias. He's like the guy that's not there.
Exactly.
And then that one debate, they kind of were mocking Brett Baer, who was sponsoring.
Right.
And Ron Paul's going on, and Brett Baer kind of looks at the camera and goes,
How are we
crazy
gonna
Uncle
shut him up?
Ron's at it again, and then goes back. And that's not right. I mean, that's a bias
Well,
against
because
it.
I think he's saying things that are threatening. It's threatening our establishment. It's threatening to, like, the sheep, maybe, that all of a sudden, like Richard said, he gets people to think. They don't want people thinking. The establishment wants us just to go USA and then shut up, and then we'll take it from there. And Ron Paul is making us think, like, why are we in 130 countries? Why do we have 900 military bases? Why are we still in Korea and Germany and Japan when their economies are better than ours? So what is going on? Do you know? And so I think that's very threatening to the establishment, and the establishment is right and left.
Yeah. Well, you could be right. I mean, I'm
hope
not
so.
buying into the whole Ron Paul. I'm not buying into like the conspiracy theory that somehow is trying to silence Ron Paul. I think his biggest problems are were typified with that exchange, where he tried to rationally look at, wouldn't it be better to capture terrorists and try them and interrogate them and get more information about
Wouldn't it be
them?
better to do that?
We did that to the Nazi war criminals. Isn't that a better way to go? And then there's a visceral reaction. Those son of a guns came in here, killed 3,000 of our people. It took us 8 years to get them, but we finally got them, and we feel good about that.
Well, Bush, though, he took his eye off the target. Like, as soon as they decided, let's go into Iraq, people are going, what about bin Laden? He's like, well, I don't really care. So then all of a sudden it was like, okay, they tripped over him in Pakistan. Now, the only thing is, just like Richard said, there is a just war ethic, and there's a Christian war ethic also. And our country seems to have forgotten that. And when Ron Paul mentions the golden rule, and you're in this heavily Christian evangelical state, and they all laugh at the golden rule, we are definitely going
this
down.
this is the point that I think people were laughing or booing or something like that, is basically what I believe, and you guys are experts on this, but what Ron Paul, what grates against some people, is this concept that we brought terrorism onto ourselves. And that if we were just better people or didn't support Israel or whatever it was, didn't consume Israel, whatever gripe people have, this concept that somehow, like I had a friend that died in the World Trade Center. He was just working hard. He was going to be married. He just got up and went to work, and he was just working hard. He didn't do anything to anyone. And for terrorists, bloodthirsty terrorists, to come over and kill stewardesses and take over planes and fly them into buildings, that somehow we're bringing this upon ourselves.
But Marty, those
that
were...
grates against people, and that's why I think he's having trouble.
Well, Marty, they were from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, all
Okay,
the
so
more.
why are we attacking Iraq?
Well, exactly. But the point that Ron Paul is saying, and I quoted him, he said, why are we endlessly bombing people? That's why they came over and did terrorist acts on us. That's what he said
We
in the
did have
debate.
What is wrong with asking that question? Why do we endlessly bomb people? I mean, we have a history of. I'm in danger of
Don't,
being
look,
accused
we're just
of-
hashing
of
things out.
defending Iran, and I don't defend Iran, but Iran hasn't attacked anybody. Started a war
600 years.
in, I was going to say 300. It's probably 600
600.
years, and here we are. We're talking about attacking Iran. Okay, very belligerent talk going on, and this is not unusual. We have been aggressive in lots of countries, basically back from the early 1900s.
Right.
And so we have to ask ourselves, is this aggressive posture getting us anywhere? Or is it creating enemies? Now, is it right for Osama bin Laden to take out the World Trade Center? Absolutely not.
Does that cry out for a reaction?
It cries out for the right reaction.
Okay, so going and shooting them isn't the right reaction.
Going and killing hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, okay, who are just as innocent as those people in the World Trade Center, is not the answer. All it does is fuel more hatred and anger and make things
So what
worse.
would the right reaction have been?
It would have actually. Ron Paul had a very good suggestion, and everybody laughed at him. There's a portion of the Constitution that deals with letters of marque and reprisal. The Congress would have authorized the country to take a very focused approach and go after Osama bin Laden. Okay, not attack a country. It wasn't a country that attacked us. It wasn't a nation state that attacked us. It was a criminal band. And that letter of marque and reprisal is designed to go after exactly that type of thing, just as it was used with the Barbary Pirates in Jefferson's time.
Larry.
Yeah, thanks, Marty.
First of all, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad I could stay
really
awake
appreciate
today.
it.
Thank you,
the
Marty.
famous now Larry Ditkoff. You've been taking notes.
I've been taking a couple
Graduated
of
from an Ivy League school, and you have opinions. Please share them
Okay,
with us.
yeah, a couple of points I wanted to touch on, just a couple of things that Richard had said. One about, he made reference to the Tim Russert interview with Ron Paul and about the American Civil War and slavery, and he said, well, the other countries got rid of slavery on their own. There was a brutal slave revolt that was put down in Haiti in 1854.
That's right.
And
I talked about, mentions that.
okay, and that nation never, ever recovered.
Right.
You know, because, so it wasn't like they came to it on its own. It was,
Go ahead, Larry.
it was,
Keep
okay,
talking.
so that would say one thing. In regards to bin Laden, killing him, it's not like, say, hunting, well, Hitler died in a bunker, but had he not, or say a Joseph Mengele type, 10 years, 15 years after the fact, in order to exact justice on them. Bin Laden still, we don't know how much money he personally had. We don't know how much he was involved in financing al-Qaeda operations throughout the world, as well as planning operations. So the fact that he was killed, it's not just based on vengeance, it's to prevent other deaths. So I think that was a good thing, and I think the president was right to do it. In regards to I didn't see the whole GOP debate in South Carolina.
There's one on tonight. I
Yeah.
mean,
The last-
it's almost like Jersey Shore. They just run them over and over again, and you can't turn on the TV without
seeing it.
guys
Okay.
with a blue background, blue blazers,
Okay.
arguing about stuff.
But one of the things I saw, he says, well, you know, we have to differentiate between al-Qaeda and the Taliban. That al-Qaeda wants to attack us here.
Now, who said that?
This was Ron Paul.
Okay.
He said al-Qaeda wants to attack us here. Taliban just wants to wreak havoc in its own area of the world, and they really weren't interested in coming after us. You know, you listen to a lot of these guys, you know, Newt Gingrich especially about American exceptionalism. He has the historical bent. Let's make America great. And does this country have some sort of values that differentiates itself from others, from others in the world? And it's clear you have to make sure you're not unctuous, you're not holier than thou, but to an extent that we don't just sit back and let the people die in Rwanda, say. With Black Hawk Down. Again, that was under Clinton. But there are times we have made interventions in regions, and yes,
I think
there are times
Black
we've done
Hawk
it
Down
for
was Somalia, wasn't it?
Hotel Rwanda, my mistake. My bad.
Actually, Rwanda would be an example where we did. Where,
we did what?
We did not intervene. We allowed this genocidal, between the Hutu and the Tutsi.
Tutsi, yeah.
You're right.
In
Somalia,
you're right.
we actually did intervene, and we got our butts kicked, and we left, and actually showed weakness, which Osama bin Laden actually cited when he said that America was a paper tiger, and if you bloody their nose, they would run.
Okay, but my point, even though I was in error, you're right, Marty. It was.
Yeah. But in the one case, it's a good example because in one case in Rwanda, we didn't intervene and millions of people died. On second thought, maybe we should have. In Somalia, there are people starving, and we're just there to protect the people given the grain, and we do intervene, and it doesn't work out so good. So what are you supposed to do? But go ahead.
The point I'm making, is about American exceptionalism. I thought, and I was on this show, and I said, I thought we were right to go into Libya. And it's everyone else was.
No, we're joking because you're. I don't mean to make you the apologist. You think I'm the dove
and you're the hawk.
No, a couple things.
Yeah.
This is we're going to get right back to Ron Paul because I want to get all of your input on can he pull this off. Yeah. But Barack Obama was elected, basing that he was going to close down Gitmo. That this,
Marty, do you really think Gitmo is the most important thing on the minds of the American people? Yes, he said that.
Well, he said that, but he didn't do that. He said that, this intervention in Iraq and using drones and stuff like that is terrible. We should
I don't know if he said drones was. We're talking about it. We're talking about it in the green room.
Incarcerating people without due process of law and habeas corpus is wrong. He just re-signed that thing
what's funny, Marty?
For future presidents.
On other shows that you hosted.
He said he was going to get us out of 2. He didn't get us out of 2. He added a 3rd.
On the shows that you've hosted, Marty.
Yes.
And which I've been the good fortune to be a panel member.
Yes.
We were talking about your favorite topic, which is Obamacare, and we were also talking about the stimulus package, and everyone was saying how terrible it was. I go, well, that's what he ran on. That's what he said he would do, and he would do it. And then you were bashing him for that. Now, when he doesn't do things that he said he would do, you're bashing him for that. So
I'm bashing him for this week. I'm bashing him for Keystone Pipeline and stuff like that.
I've been told by producer that I can interrupt.
Richard, please interrupt. And I want to spend the last 10 minutes of the show, which is a long time on TV, on can Ron Paul actually pull this out?
Yes, but I need to respond.
Please.
Okay. Once again, process is important.
Yes.
You think it's a good idea to go get Osama bin Laden and put a hit on him, okay? Without the process. I think the process is more important. It protects all of us. Same thing when it goes to war in Libya. I don't think the president should take it upon himself, contrary to the Wars Powers Act, to go and attack another sovereign nation. It might be a good idea, it might not be a good idea, but it's more important to obey the process. Slavery. If we were serious about ending slavery, we never would have enacted the Fugitive Slave Act, and it would have ended just like that if the Fugitive Slave Act had been repealed long before the Civil War. It might not have prevented secession, but that would have ended slavery. Can Ron Paul?
I'm not so sure about that because the entire South was based on a slave economy with cotton and everything else, and they weren't going to give up their slaves without Ulysses S. Grant and the boys going down there.
It was protected by the Fugitive Slave Act, which obligated the northern free states to return the slaves.
I got that
to the
part.
South.
Yeah. I got that part.
And all it had to do was repeal that. That's what happened in Brazil. The slaves were able to just run away.
Wasn't what happened in Haiti.
Well, no, because they didn't have the freedom to run away. They were closed in by that island. But anyway.
Let's bring this up because the primary is going to be in 2 days. Make your best case for Ron Paul.
Can he make it? I seriously don't know, and I don't think he really knows either. He's going to give it his best shot. He's making great inroads. I can't believe that his popularity increases day by day. It could happen. If it doesn't happen, he's still accomplished a huge amount. The whole debate about the Fed would never have taken place without his input starting his input started decades ago, but it became a public matter 4 years ago. He's had a huge impact. He will continue to have a huge impact whether he wins the election or not, or whether he wins the nomination or not.
Son's a senator.
Son's a senator.
I mean, it's a family business.
No, and also, I think if the media's done their utmost to silence this man, and if they would give him a fair shake the way they do the other candidates, then I think his popularity would even be greater than it is right now. So I think he's done phenomenally well. And when people hear his message, they're sold. If they hear the pure message and not the distorted message or the silence of the media. Plus, we had done a little research, and 4 years ago, Ron Paul was nationally was like at 6.5%. Now nationally he's over 15%, I believe. He was 5th in Iowa and New Hampshire 4 years ago. Tied as second in Iowa, really, and second in New Hampshire. And in South Carolina, after Newt, I think, implodes, as much as the neocons are trying to, buoy this whole thing, I really do believe that Ron Paul maybe has a good chance of second.
It's very interesting because there's this, I really don't want to vote for Mitt Romney, and then you got Santorum with his sweater vest, and you got Rick Perry dropping out and throwing his weight behind Newt Gingrich.
Right.
Then you got Newt's wife number 2 coming on saying as how, when I had an affair with him, that was okay, but when he had an affair on me, that was wrong. Which is a little bit of a hollow argument right there, too. So it's interesting because I think, one time people are going after the evangelical vote. One thing about the evangelical vote is they do love a story of redemption. And I think Newt is playing into that where I made mistakes and I've redeemed myself and so forth.
3 times the charm. Huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
We've seen.
Keith, tell us what's going to happen, please. This is live television. We don't know what's happened in South Carolina.
What we've seen so far is a lot of flash in the pans. Romney clearly doesn't have the party behind him. Others have been the flavor of the week and they've come and gone. Ron Paul is the one guy who's got a steady build. And the reason is he's consistent, not only throughout this this race, but you go back 20, 30 years, he's talking about the same principles. He's predicting a lot of what's been happening. And going back to Afghanistan, he voted to go into Afghanistan. When we're attacked, we attack back. But again, we don't go out with these adventures. You talk about this concept of being attacked and getting attacked because we attack. That concept is called blowback. The CIA is well aware of it. When Iran took our embassy in '79, that was blowback for supporting the Shah, who ran roughshod over his people. And the more and more we give up these liberties, I think Ron Paul's point is, we've already lost to the terrorists if we're giving up our freedom and liberties, because that's what we fight for to begin with.
All right. Well, Richard, there's a minute left. Can you give your appeal for Ron Paul and why you think he would make the best next president of the United States?
Well, over the last maybe 8 years, I think that the establishment, the folks who have the power right now have really been exposed. They've been exposed with TARP about who really benefits from the system. I think we have a lot of Wall Street bankers supported by the Fed and the Treasury who benefit from the system. Okay, we've seen a foreign policy where we do have in 130 countries and 900 or so bases. We have a Defense Department budget that exceeds or is equal to all the other Defense Department budgets in the world put together. Okay, you have to ask yourself, who is all that? It's not really defense, but aggressive force for. Whose interests are being protected? There's only one guy who wants to challenge the way things are. Only one out of all the Democrats, all the Republicans, And that's Ron Paul. We should vote for him. Give him our support.
Well, listen, let it never be said that here on the Marty Heiser Show, we did not give Ron Paul equal time. He didn't get any, 89 seconds like he got on one debate or anything like that. See, I know all the story. I know the whole storyline. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next time. I want to thank Larry Ditkoff for coming, Barb for being here, Richard Land, Keith Vila. Again, on the website, or it's called Ridgefield
Liberty Co-op.
Liberty Co-op. Google that, Ridgefield Liberty Co-op. There's a lot of enthusiasm for Ron Paul, and by all means, get out and vote. Join us next week, and we're going to have a lot of cool stuff. I'm not sure what it is yet. I got a week to plan. We'll see you then, and thanks for joining us. Good night.